The fall anime season is right around the corner, and what would a season be without one of the pillars of modern shonen fueling the hype? My Hero Academia is back for its 6th season, promising its most exhilarating and impactful arc yet. The Paranormal Liberation War, featuring a long-awaited confrontation between the pro-heroes and the League of Villains. Any arc with war in the title is going to feature as many characters as possible, heroes and villains alike. So, let's rank the strongest heroes in My Hero Academia. By the way, this will include spoilers for the manga, including what's to be covered in this season and beyond. So, if you don't like to read, come back in a few years to argue about how wrong this list is.
Oh boy.
Now, what's a hero without a mentor? Shota Aizawa made his debut early on as the homeroom teacher of UA High School's Class 1A. Possessing the quirk Erasure, it allows him to nullify the quirks of anyone he looks at, which is the perfect power for any teacher babysitting a bunch of preteens that could potentially level buildings. He doesn't even need to maintain eye contact with the people he disables, he only has to keep his eyes open. And like any hero with a sense of style, he covers up for his quirk's weakness with drip. The gold goggles he keeps under his scarf conceal his eyes so his opponents can't see who he's targeting. And his scarf is just as useful as the quirk in some situations. Made out of carbon nanofiber, Eraserhead can whip around anyone he's fighting just like Spider-Man. During the USJ incident, Aizawa managed to nullify the quirks of 3 villains while also managing to take them on with his handy-dandy scarf and martial arts. Keep in mind, he had to do all of this without blinking.
Serious dry eye.
Unfortunately, few powers are perfect. Erasure may seem like the perfect counter, but it's somewhat limited. Mutant-type quirks don't care about it since they aren't something that can be turned on or off, and it's equally useless against abilities that don't use quirks at all. Despite how valuable the quirk still is, its effectiveness is directly tied to Aizawa's eyes. At best, it just means he has to keep eye drops on him. His stamina is absurd, allowing him to hold his own in high-intensity fights without blinking. This man has been on the front lines of the Paranormal Liberation War, suppressing Shigaraki's All for One. He had to amputate his leg to stop the effects of a quirk-disabling bullet while keeping his eyes open, which is unbelievable to me. I can't even see straight when I stub my big toe. But hey, he got a sick robot leg, so that's an even trade in my book. Although he also lost an eye in the same fight, so it's really not. While his efforts against Shigaraki weren't wasted, it's safe to say that, for now, his potential strength has been erased.
You're wasting my time now.
Now, some might say that the only thing as important as a hero's power is their outfit. Thankfully, Best Jeanist has both on lock. His quirk, Fiber Master, grants him the ability to psychically manipulate the threads in any nearby piece of fabric. Basically, he's Magneto, but for thread. Through manipulating the threads of his full denim outfit, he's capable of restraining as many as 12 Nomu all at once. And efforts like that barely use up any of his own fiber. He's even capable of ensnaring All for One via his 3-piece suit, as seen during the Camino Ward incident, although AFO was able to overpower him with relative ease. He can do more than just trap people in their own trappings, though. As seen in the same fight, he's capable of turning his allies' clothing into an emergency escape option. Fiber Master is such an impressive skill, it's surprising that All for One didn't try to steal it at the time. But even he had to admit that this level of proficiency could only come as a result of years of training. It just goes to show that unlike clothes, the quirk doesn't make the man makes the quirk. Is it safe to say that Hawks is the Falco of My Hero Academia? He's the bird-themed hero that's arguably more popular than the main protagonist, although he's not nearly as cocky. Cocky. Get it? It's a bird joke. Anyway, while he may not be able to lift up a bus, Keigo Takami might be the strongest when it comes to squeezing the most out of his quirk's utility. Fierce Wings grants Hawks a pair of massive red wings that allow him to fly at ludicrous speeds. He's fast enough that he can outpace Deku, Bakugo, and even Endeavor without even trying. Now that definitely comes from his desire to create a world where every hero can safely get some downtime in tandem with his natural ability. And that's how you know he's a true hero. He fights for mandatory weekends. But that happened during some small-time scraps. What about when he's fighting for his life against the League of Villains? Now, we've seen that Dobby's fire is on par with that of Endeavor and Todoroki, and Hawks was able to evade a point-blank shot while proceeding to loop around a building to go in for the kill. Okay, he was a little scorched, but that just adds to his durability as well. Now, despite me downplaying his physical strength, Hawks' feather blades should be feared. He's capable of detaching his own feathers and taking telekinetic control over them, converting them into either projectiles or a sword that can cut through high-end Nomu. The individual feathers get work done too. During the fight with the advanced Nomu Hood, he threw several feathers into Endeavor's back to help propel him into the sky to exterminate the Nomu at a safe distance. This means that he is able to throw razor feathers with enough strength to move a 260-pound man and knows exactly where to hit him so it wouldn't disrupt any key joints or muscles. Hawks is living proof that creativity and precision make up for brute strength, earning his spot as the number 2 hero right behind his idol. Now, when My Hero Academia started, All Might stood atop the world of heroes as number 1. But in order to have a number 1, you have to have a number 2. And isn't it fitting that the number 2 hero in the world was everyone's favorite crappy dad, Enji Todoroki? Flame Hero Endeavor, wielder of the Hellfire quirk, had a reputation for being envious of All Might's popularity. The only thing he's better known for is his propensity for eugenics and ruining relationships. Thankfully, we're not here to discuss how he figuratively destroyed his family, but how he can literally destroy Nomus all on his own, with the help of his buddy Hawks, of course. Is it any coincidence that 2 of the best episodes of the first 2 seasons feature a top hero single-handedly owning a Nomu? These things are no pushovers. They come at you like a freight train on steroids, they feel no pain, they can regenerate limbs. It's like if they managed to make a clone army of the Incredible Hulk. Now, we saw during the Hosu and Kamino Ward incidents that Endeavor could immolate one of these with little effort, as expected of a top hero. But at the end of Season 4, Endeavor was confronted with a new, advanced breed of Nomu that was tough to take down even while teamed up with Hawks. Harder, better, faster, and stronger than those that came before, this type of Nomu was resilient to Endeavor's Hellfire, being able to regenerate incinerated cells as long as its brain remained intact. It possessed enough intelligence to reason out that Endeavor had a limit on how often he could use his signature move, Prominence Burn, as pushing himself too hard would risk injury. So, how does he triumph over this new threat? By pushing himself way too hard and risking injury, all while begrudgingly embracing All Might's mantra and giving himself a new finishing move. Plus Ultra Prominence Burn. Hell truly hath no fury like a crappy father undergoing a redemption arc, if you can call it that. Endeavor has continued to push himself even further, effectively being the one to soften up All for One before Deku can deliver the final blow in the current arc. He's dealt more visible damage to him than even All Might could back in Season 3, pulling off a heat vision technique that makes him look more like Homelander than Horikoshi may have intended. His unrelenting fury is so impressive, even All for One has to admit that he reminds him of All Might. If that hasn't earned him the spot of number 1 hero, I'm not sure exactly what else can. Well, other than being able to salvage his relationship with his family. Alright, this is where we get into big manga spoilers. As the final act of My Hero Academia begins, All Might decides that Japan's heroes aren't enough. He's gotta call in the big guns from all over the world.
Perfect.
And few guns are bigger than America's symbol, Star and Stripe, the world's strongest woman. The number 1 pro hero of the United States of America, Kathleen Bate, is basically what you get if you Google All Might Rule 63, being the most jacked female in the series. But it's not the muscles that make her a force to be reckoned with, it's the quirk. With the ability to set rules that warp reality as she sees fit, New Order might just be the most broken ability in the series. In order to activate this quirk, all she has to do is touch her target, call its name, and is able to impose any rule over it. In her debut chapter, the first thing she does when fighting Tomura is cause the atmosphere in front of her for the next 100 meters to stop existing. Backed up by the American Air Force, who are piloting fighter jets armed with lasers, she is able to physically hold lasers reflected by Tomura by simply declaring, "I can hold lasers." Upon granting herself this additional power, the atmospheric restriction is lifted, exposing one of the few limits that New Order has. She can only impose 2 rules at a time, and she's already applying one to herself that gives her super strength. Star and Stripe was even able to command the air to become 1,000 times her size, essentially giving her the Greek god Zeus, but as a JoJo stand. The effects of her quirk can even remain in effect after it's extracted from her body, manifesting itself as a kaiju-sized ghost of All Might. Yeah, the more I talk about this quirk, the more sense it makes why Star and Stripe and New Order didn't stick around for very long. The limits of the super strength are somewhat ambiguous, although it is stated outright by Tomura that it's nothing compared to All Might's. One of her attempts at pacifying Tomura was stating that if Shigaraki Tomura were to move even an inch from this spot, his heart would stop. Now, you, the viewer, would not have noticed this, but the writer has been referring to Tomura with quotation marks because at this point in the story, Shigaraki and All for One have essentially fused their consciousness within Shigaraki's body, rendering it ambiguous to who he actually is. So, the reason Star and Stripe is ultimately defeated is due to a loophole. Now, given that and how her CEO, Commander Akbar, tells her that her being selfish and hasty is the reason that the country of America shines, I can't help but think that Horikoshi is trying to say something. It's kind of ironic that the former #1 hero of Japan is at the #2 spot, isn't it? The previous wielder of One for All Might's boundless strength and indomitable spirit enabled him to overcome the threat of All for One not once, but twice, and establish an era of peace and near absolute stability throughout Japan. While it'll never be known what the full extent of his powers could have been, All Might was the strongest hero in the world, even after his injuries at the hands of All for One reduced his maximum might and ability to maintain his enhanced form. Even still, he was capable of clobbering a Nomu that was engineered specifically to kill him, literally punching the shock absorption quirk out of him. Even with training weights equipped to put him on Deku and Bakugo's level, All Might is incredibly nimble and capable of overpowering his opponents with ease. Out of the few times we've seen him active in his prime, he is absolutely unstoppable. In the Vigilantes spin-off manga, he was able to clear out an army of instant villains across an entire city in a matter of seconds. He could even launch himself off the side of a building to fly at least half a dozen city blocks in the span of a few seconds without even cracking the glass. Such precision! Now, since his first appearance, the comparisons to Superman have been pretty clear, as he seems nearly as invincible even following his injuries. To reiterate, he took a beating from a Nomu genetically engineered to kill him and sustained no lasting injuries, and took All for One's air cannon attack point blank, largely unscathed. Well, I say largely unscathed since following his second encounter with All for One, All Might is no longer able to enter his enhanced form in any meaningful capacity. His final act as a hero was maintaining an illusion of his strength for the world to see, impressing upon his protege Midoriya that his legacy is his to carry. It's only fitting that the one to top All Might on this list is his successor himself, Izuku Midoriya. He began his journey as an All Might fanboy that finally got to live his dream after finally meeting his hero. Upon acknowledging his heroic spirit and boundless optimism, All Might allowed Izuku to inherit his power and become the 9th wielder of One for All. Initially, as a fanboy given superpowers, Midoriya could only imitate a fraction of All Might's strength without utterly crippling himself, as his body hadn't acclimated to his newfound power. Although, even then, it took weeks and weeks of training for him to be able to throw a superpowered punch without breaking every bone in his right arm. But that's the power of dedication. As time passed, Midoriya became able to harness more and more of All Might's strength, being able to take on threats worthy of the big man himself. Overhaul was undoubtedly a one-for-all level threat. At the time, he was able to team up with Overhaul's daughter, Eri, using her rewind ability to continually heal the damage being done to his body. As the 9th wielder of One for All, Deku is able to access the quirks of the previous users. So far, these are the skills that he's acquired. Float is the quirk of the previous user, Nana Shimura, which allows the user to suspend themselves in midair. Smokescreen is the quirk of the 6th user, N, allowing Deku to apply a smokescreen around him to provide visual cover and disorient enemies. Black Whip allows Deku to sprout tendrils of black energy from anywhere in his body. These allow him to grapple enemies from a distance and increase his mobility to the point where he's basically Spider-Man. Danger Sense grants Deku a radar for threats in a nearby radius and... wait, now he is Spider-Man! Finally, we come to Fa Jin, the quirk of the 3rd user of One for All. This quirk allows its user to continually store up kinetic energy and unleash it in an explosive burst. This, in combination with using One for All at 45%, along with Black Whip to give him additional momentum, allows Midoriya to effectively use 100% of One for All's power, putting him on par with All Might in terms of strength. Well, post-Prime All Might anyway. Deku still has one more power to inherit, although at this moment in time it's uncertain as to what it is, only that it belonged to the second user and is only to be used as a last resort. If anyone is doubting the ranking at this point, it is likely that this power will definitively push Deku over the edge. Now, while his strength may not reach that of All Might in his prime, Deku's true strength lies in his intelligence, adaptability, and heroic spirit. It is because of these traits that All Might chose him to be his successor, deeming him worthy of being a great hero. Now, if this video has had anything to say, it's that a hero's true strength isn't defined solely by how hard you can punch a villain in the face. It is how you apply your strengths and what cause you apply those strengths to. Who do you think the strongest hero is? Can they beat Goku? Let us know in the comments below.